Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those of you that might be looking to find a new job in software engineering, especially those that have maybe never had a job before and are out of college and are new to the job market, this video kind of is targeting you in terms of discussing some of the realities out there that you're facing and some things that can help you mitigate some of those difficulties and actually find the job that you're looking for. Now, this is not just all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, there's not very much good here, but it is a set of tough things that you can do that will really help you get past that, past just handing in a resume, past that first interview, and into a good job if you stick at it. So the harsh realities of 2025 is we're now coming off these large scale layoffs from large tech companies. So there's more people looking for jobs out there. There's this executive level obsession with AI as a replacement for entry level labor. So a lot of the investments that would be going towards new workers is now being threatened by AI expenditures and so on and so forth. And there's just these larger scale economic uncertainties about how the global markets work. That means a lot of companies are much less willing to invest in long-term things like new jobs or new positions. So it's really bad out there. So the amount of effort to find a new position is high as it's ever been historically, since maybe even the Depression, if you look at some of the numbers. So if people are telling you that it's not bad, it is. It is very difficult. And it's not that it's impossible, but it is quite difficult historically. The other thing about that is that it does point to the fact that you need to do a fallback skill. And that is more the case than ever. So you have to balance not only the amount of work you're doing to try to find a job, but also maybe developing some shorter term skills that you can use to help pay off bills and do all these types of things until you find the job that you really want. And so the amount of effort you're going to have to do to find work is bigger than it's ever been for a long time. Now, here's the thing: the long-term demand for software engineering is going to remain, and I think it's going to actually be underestimated a couple of years from now. And I have to make a bet, and I'm betting against a little bit of it. But from what I'm seeing, the AI thing is just another dot-com bubble, and it's going to get rather quickly tempered. And the reason being is that you don't get more experienced engineers out of just having them use AI, and you have to have a new generation of engineers because a lot of these senior people will increasingly have to retire or not be as productive as they used to be, and so the demand will always come there. And it was the same thing I saw for a while. There, it was almost impossible to find work after the first dot-com crash, but you can see how quickly that job market rebounded. It was only in a couple of years when people were starting to look for jobs again. So that long-term reality is not going to go away. And not only that, but the short-term difficulties may change before you know it as well. So it is worth trying to put in the effort to still find a job. So given all this, there's going to be a lot of tough questions you have to ask yourself and really accept some compromises in the short term, that might be hard for people to deal with. So, there's going to be things like you think are necessary for you to work or be successful that really aren't. And you're going to have to just really take a hard look at what that means. So the first thing about it is that as kind of boring and business oriented as LinkedIn is, and how I know a lot of people in the startup space don't use it or these other spaces, but the vast majority of networking that you're going to do realistically will be through LinkedIn. You're going to have a LinkedIn presence. You're going to have to develop some social networks there, and you're going to have to keep an eye out on things. Yes, you're going to have to deal with a lot of spam from recruiters and other types of stuff. But when it comes to the job market, the vast majority of the tech jobs out there are still through these more traditional companies. And so you're going to have to put the effort to have a LinkedIn page out there. And that will make you stand out against some of your peers who don't want to do that. And that is a real advantage. And it's twofold. One is it shows that you're willing to do what it takes to find the right opportunity for you, despite of how it looks in terms of being cool or fashionable. And that's a big thing. That's a big win. People don't want just, you know, people that are just want to look cool. They want people that actually get the job done. And so that really does signal that you're really interested in just finding a job that works for you versus being part of the in group, so to speak. GitHub, obviously, if you don't have a reasonable portfolio code on GitHub, you're going to have to work on that. And for goodness sakes, don't just post up a bunch of leak code solutions. It's better if you just have one complete application that you've done than a bunch of code snippets, and trying to have some interest in making what you have up there in terms of an application interesting. For example, I think we've all seen the to-do list example. Find something else that's maybe as easy to do to show off that you know what you're doing, but has a different twist on it. Pick a domain or something that you really like. It might be game oriented or it might be book oriented or whatever, but shows something a little bit of your flavor of what you're interested in, and just isn't the standard box, what everybody else has done type of example. And not only that, but make sure that you've developed it. If you use a lot of AI to develop it, you will get caught out when you are asked to explain your code because you will not be able to do it. That is the simple fact. Is that you didn't write it, therefore you didn't really read it. And even if you try to read it, but you didn't write it, you can't explain it. And so you'll either have to admit right away that you use a lot of AI to generate this stuff, and they might be fine with that, or you'll just be caught out, and that will ruin that interview for you. So it's best to do all that work by yourself. So cover letters are another thing. You're going to have to learn to write a lot of cover letters, and you have to be able to do it quickly because you have to tailor every cover letter to every position. It's unfair, it's annoying, it's boring, it has to be done because the AI will pick out the bog standard stuff that's obviously a cover letter that is just standard, and they will just reject these things out of right. So they won't even look at your resume. Your cover letter is what gets you in the door. And your resume, you should work with some people. If you're from a college or recent graduate, you can work with the alumni office or the career counseling offices there to get your resume up. There's lots of other resources out there, but it's your resume is basically a page-long summary of your education and what you're interested in, and it doesn't need to be any more than that. What shows that you really do have something to say and to go a little bit of the extra mile is that cover letter. So the other thing too, and personally, I never liked this part, and it is really awful. And so I understand if people are really allergic to this, because I certainly was. But you're going to have to network in person and online, and you're going to have to do it consistently, and you're going to have to do it a lot, because the best chance you have of finding work in general throughout history has always been through networking, has never been through finding an open job listing and then applying to it with a resume, right? That does work for some people, but it's never as good as networking. So if you're a recent college graduate, really lean on the campus and alumni resources available to you. You'd be surprised at how effective that can be. Because what you can do is you can just get your foot in the door and talk to somebody at the company first. And you can get a lot of valuable information about what potential jobs that they have there. And the thing about it is that if you really go the extra mile, there have been people out there that are, when they're really passionate about things, they find the right people. They literally write a job. They literally create a demand that the company didn't know that they had for, and they're literally writing their own ticket. And as contrary as it might seem, that actually might be a better way of getting positions now than ever before, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions and how to resolve them. And if you can come in and say, hey, you're not doing something that you should be doing, and really make a case for how hiring you is going to save them a lot of money and effort, well, then congratulations, you've gotten yourself a very interesting job with people you want to work with. So all this comes down to developing soft skills. You've got to learn to become a better communicator when you're talking one-on-one with people, as well as in email. These are skills you can work on. You can get coaching around them. You can read about them. There's this other thing too, is that get a set of business cards with just your basic information that links to your LinkedIn, links to your GitHub, has your contact me / business like email. If you need to make a separate Gmail account that's what you need to do. And if you have a personal website or blog or anything that really is, really on point about, okay, if you have a, business blog or things like that, put that on there as well. Be able to hand those out so people can remember you. And not only that, but get used to the habit of jotting down people's information and names. The people that can do networking really well is the ones that have learned the skill to basically pick up people's names and where they are and be able to recall that. And if you're better at that, and you don't have to be very good to stick out in terms of being a software engineer. If you're really good at, if you do an extra effort to go through to remember people and get back to them and go on to that types of things, you're going to stick out from the crowd way faster than your peers just by making that effort in something that has nothing to do with how good of a programmer you are. Interviewing. You're going to have to interview once you get interviews, and hopefully you'll get to that point. And I know there's a lot of people that haven't, and that's unfortunate. There might be some reasons I'll talk about why that may be the case later down the road. But when you are interviewing, the irony here is that you have to be as critical or more critical about interviewing them as they are of you. And the thing about it is that you need to actually go in there with the attitude that the goal behind an interview is not to show them that you have enough experience and skills for the job. That's a given, right? Just assume that. You know, if you didn't, they probably wouldn't really be talking to you. So that's an assumption. That just take that as an assumption. That's very given. What you were trying to find out is that if they're a good match for you. And of course, they're trying to also figure that out. But the best way to do that is that when you come in and show them that you can ask the tough questions and that you really are looking for a long-term opportunity versus just a paycheck, that will make all the difference. So again, never think about the right things you're saying to an interview. What's the right question to an answer? If you're doing that, you're already behind. So just don't even bother about that. The thing about it is that my only specific advice here is that when you're given a question, don't try to answer right away. Just take a brief second and compose an answer in your head and then answer it. That always works out better in the end. And you never seem eager to get a position. Interested is enough. But always temper your excitement, because it's excitement and eagerness can be seen as kind of, oh, they have to have this job. And if you look like you have to have the job, then they're going to doubt everything that you're saying otherwise. It's like, okay, well, why would they be honest if they just really need a job? Whereas you can say, it's like, oh, they seem interested in it, but they really are looking to find the right fit. They're going to believe what you said much more than they would if you seem desperate, to be perfectly honest. All right, so first time job interview shortcuts for you that are kind of newer to job interviews. And these are some bog standard answers that you won't see other places. So these are kind of a couple of my secret weapons, and I would still use these to this day if I was less experienced. But basically, if someone asks you about your strengths or weaknesses, just go, you know what? I really don't have enough experience in the workforce to truly know what I'm going to be great at and what I will need to work with my peers on. But I'm really looking forward to finding that out. It's a punt, but it's a very good punt. Because the thing about it is that it points out that basically you don't know what those are going to be, but you look forward to giving those experiences. And that's the most honest answer you can give, right? The rest of it, you're just guessing. Well, I think I'm this, but I'm not very good at this. Well, how do you know? I've never been in the workforce. More experienced people are looking for a new job. Then you have to be able to answer that more, more about, okay, well, this is what I'm really good at, and this is what I struggle with, right? So mine has always been the thing about it is like, I'm technically very good and stuff like that, but I struggle to get people to come together and support the kind of things that I would like to do in terms of getting the company where it needs to go. So that was always my answer, because that was pretty much obvious. Also, when you asked about where you see yourself in X years, you just note that, the industry is constantly changing, and where you're going to be is completely dependent on the environment that you join and the support you get from that organization. So the thing about it is that your success is not completely about you. It is about getting the resources you need to be successful. And if you reflect that back to them and say, hey, is this a place where I will be successful in X years? That is going to be much more better than you saying it's like, oh, well, I'm going to be this or this, obviously, because again, that's just conjecture, right? And you don't know enough. Now, again, if you're more experienced, you would have to have some of the ideas of the goals of like, I really like to be here in terms of a manager or this type of thing in 5 years. So again, reflect back questions where it makes sense. If you're given the strength and weaknesses question, you answer that, you ask them right back. Okay, thanks. What do you see as your strengths and weaknesses, if I may ask? If you're asked about where do you see yourself in 5 years, you go right back to it. It's like, well, how did your first 3 years of this company work out? Right? And make sure you get enough to know about how long they've been in the company. One of the things about asks right away, it's like, hi, when they introduce themselves, you can say, hey, very nice to meet you. How long have you been working here? What's your current job title? So these basic types of things, so that if they ever ask you, oh, well, what do you want to, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You can ask them, it's like, well, you've been here 2 years. What is your first year like versus what you first when you first joined the job? Those are kind of the great things. Always be reflecting stuff back onto them. If they spend more time asking and answering your basically answering your questions than they are asking you about things, then you're in the driver's seat. And that's a good place to be. Don't try to push it, but if you can naturally gain that position where it is much more a dialogue back and forth versus them just constantly answering you questions and you just giving out answers, that's a better place to be. So again, take in, and this is the thing, you may want to do this on your phone if you really want to, but I always say that pen and paper is the best thing to do here. Take in a small notepad, take in your pen and paper, and take notes about every person you talk to and what you talked about. And then before they leave, make sure you thank them for their time in taking part of the interview. And then in your follow-up email to your contact, mention every single one of them as well. Okay. And this means you're going to have to craft every single follow-up letter to make it specific to that job and to the company and how your interview went. And if you don't do that, you're doing yourself a big disservice in terms of being successful in an interview. Frankly, if you don't do it, you've thrown away about 90% of the interview and anything you got out of it. So, work environment. You are going to have to be a lot more flexible on the environment you're working in, the tools you use. And I hate to say this because I am certainly a person that wants to have a certain work environment. But then again, if you may have seen some other videos, I am fine developing Windows. I use Windows as my daily driver, and I have developed in the Windows environment for quite some time. And the thing about it is that there are a lot of jobs out there that are going to require you to do that. And it's not going to necessarily be the most pleasant type of thing. But if you are saying, I want to just drag in my Mac laptop and just use that, there will be a whole set of opportunities that will not be available to you. And those are the ones that are easier to get. And strangely, they can be very, very rewarding in terms of actual work-life balance, being able to solve actual problems. And so, it's going to be one of those things where if you have this idea that you're going to be working for this amazing startup that are doing all the tools and stuff like that, if you really want to do that, note it's going to be much harder to do. If you actually want to be more realistic and say, you know what, I actually want to solve solutions and actually get some stuff done and actually have some work-life balance, there's way more jobs out there for available than you might think. And here's the thing is that if you can't be flexible in that work environment, then it shows that you care about your experience first versus actually solving actual problems. And there's going to be a lot of companies that will see that and will not want to hire you because of it, right? For every company that says, oh, we want people to fit in exactly to our mold because we're this hot startup, there are literally 6 or 7 companies out there that are saying, hey, we just want to solve people's solutions. We just want to solve problems, and you just need to get this done. And again, when you get into the company later on, you can ask for some, if you've proven your worth, then you can say, it's like, I would much prefer to be in this environment. Can we make that happen? They're more willing to make exceptions if you've proven yourself. So yeah, you're going to have to be pretty flexible in those types of things. Also, the hardest thing to do is that if you cannot see yourself in that position and being there for a year and not wanting to just leave, you're going to have to say no. If you get the position, you have to think really hard about it. But basically, it's one of those things where if you really, really, your gut is not telling you it's good for you, you're going to have to walk away because you're going to miss the thing that would be better for you. And not only that, but basically, it's never good when the first job you have is the one you couldn't keep for more than a year. I had, I was able to do that during the .com thing because I was literally go off and saying, well, why did you do all these jobs? And I said, well, I was literally offered these jobs. I did not seek them. I was offered them, and I was offered a significant pay raise every single time. So I will always pursue better opportunities if they're presented to me, but I'm not looking just to switch companies for just a bigger paycheck. And so, yeah, learn to walk away from the jobs. It's going to make the next interview easier. It's going to put you in a much better term long place. And again, if you aren't able to do that, they'll know it. And so you'll be in a worse place than you were if you can't just say, you know what, obviously this doesn't not what I'm going to do, and I'm going to walk away from it. And I have done that multiple times when I was out of work. And granted, the job position was a little bit better, but I had interviewed a couple of jobs, and I went into an interview once, and they had this thing where it's like, well, we want you to do this programming exercise, but we don't want you to be on the internet and we don't want you to look anything up. And I said, this job is not for me, and I left. And if you can do that type of thing, you're going to find your career to be much more successful in the long term. The other thing I'm going to point out is that there is a big issue in terms of workplace bias, in terms of if you don't fit the mold of what a programmer is, and some people that is a very narrow definition, there's going to be some positions out there that you're not going to get that you're more than qualified for. And that means you're going to have to seek out the places that do know that you're an asset. And not only that, but bring it up, right? You know, if it's something that you're really interested in saying, it's like, I am interested in bringing more and different perspectives to the workforce than are currently there, you should say something about that, because that will get you not only through the door, but in some cases that will get you the job, right? You talk to the one person about that and saying, hey, I'm willing to challenge the status quo. And, you know, that level of honesty can land you that gig. Just that alone, saying it's like, look, I don't like how things are being done currently. I want to do them better. That kind of passion will translate into somebody in the right workplace. And it's like, yeah, we get that. And so you need to be confident in that. Not only that, but if you started doing networking in certain places, there are people out there that will be like, hey, we want to help you kick that door down, and you have some of the energy. So do you want to start your own company doing this? That can happen more often than it ever has been before, because there's still a lot of money slushing around, and it's not all just about AI. There's a lot of people who are doing plays around, hey, we have some blind spots we know we have, and we need people that can get us around those blind spots. And if you're in that position to do that, then you know you can really make yourself an amazing career. So if you don't fit that mold, that is an advantage you need to take a full advantage of. It does not it's not a disadvantage. It is for the roles that you should not care about, because anybody can do those roles. So again, summary, you have to come into it being 100% willing to walk away for something that doesn't fit for you. You got to understand what's really essential for you in terms of a workforce versus what is really nice. Again, the tools that you're using are much more preferential than you think. Networking is really hard. Most people don't have the instincts to do it. It's unavoidable. You're going to have to learn to like something about it. Or you're just going to have yourself doing a lot more work to find a job. Again, you will find a job through networking versus just copying a resume more times than not. And so that's just an inevitability that you have to deal with. And not only that, but yes, it is very difficult to find work out here, stuff like that. But if you're passionate about software engineering, you will find a way to make it work in the long term. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you did make it this far, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.